I'd like to share with you some counterintuitive dynamics that happen in final interviews with the goal to help you to prevent these as early on in the process. The first scenario is when you prepared for a final interview, when it shows you actually prepared it, but they were looking for another type of candidate. And right from the start, I don't believe this is a candidate mistake, but I believe the mistake happens during the screening rounds. So whomever does the screening, a recruiter or someone else, did not do a good enough job to understand the qualifications of the candidate and whether the candidate stands a chance to pass that stage of final interviews. Now, they could put it in many different ways. You could be a hands-on, but they were looking for someone hands-off, and all sorts of combinations. But more interestingly for you here would be, how do you prevent such misunderstandings that you go through a full loop, so to speak, and only to find out it was impossible that you pass it in the first place? What I would suggest in these situations would be to pay particular attention to the screening rounds and try to obtain as much information and as accurate information as possible with respect to what type of subject matter expertise they're looking for in the ideal candidate. And before telling me, hey, but there's a job description supposed to say that, no, that's not enough. In my experience, job descriptions are simply clones of what used to work for them in the past for similar types of roles, but that's rarely accurate enough to make you confident that, hey, this is what they look for in the ideal candidate. Furthermore, most high-performing companies will do have the profile of a perfect candidate, will do have some core competencies that they're looking for. They will never share those with you early on in the process. But my advice to you would be to try to ask for as much as specific information to your recruiter during the screening rounds, just to ensure that, hey, yes, you are sufficiently interesting for them to go through a final round of interviews. The second topic I'd like to touch upon here would be with respect to confidential information. So what happens is that nobody would share, information that's confidential, that's under a non-disclosure agreement. Why would you as a candidate want to do anything illegal during a job interview? Now, what happens today in particular is that, especially with the proliferation of AI, it's quite easy for you to share that confidential information, and most people do share confidential information with the AI, right? So it can be quite tempting for you to overshare during these job interviews, even by example. Even if they ask you how to use AI in your work, you say, hey, I feed AI with all the company data, and then I ask them for a suggestion. I'm making an exaggeration here, but still the confidential information thing is something you must pay particular attention to here. Next thing I'd like to talk about here with respect to AI is overusing AI in your communication throughout the application process. You have an AI CV, you send an email that was rewarded using AI, you use AI rewarded answers, and all these sort of combinations. If you only do one of these, you might get away with these things. They might not take you too seriously, but whenever I have someone who likes to communicate to me using AI, they need an interface. They need the AI interface to communicate with me. That, is a serious signal that, hey, that person either cannot communicate well enough, either you are someone who can only ramble while presenting your interview answers, but it's perfectly possible that you're trying to cheat and you're using AI to make it sound as if it's, more interesting or not. So overusing AI, I believe that's also a subtle reason that many interviewers are more skeptical than you think about your performance during job interviews. I believe the fix with respect to this is quite obvious. And the last thing I wanted to talk about here, and again, I'm speaking about final interview rounds, is with respect to trying to impress during job interviews. To give an example, I recently had a senior PM in fintech, right? So someone who's supposed to speak well in these job interviews. And they were wondering why on earth did they fail an interview with a high-performing company as of recently, because they thought, their performance was stellar, was exceptional. And I actually had access to his answers and the way he presented himself during those job interviews. And what struck me the most from the beginning is how they were trying to impress. In every single answer they gave, there was an element that they wanted to sound as if they were someone exceptional for that role. What that implies most of the time would be that you try to make things a little bit up. It's not necessarily lying, outright lying, and coming up with stories you didn't fully own, but it's, a metric here and there, a decision, some small signals, that might not, that, you think, hey, that's perfectly plausible because I sell myself, I try to impress during the job interviews, that, if you add overall, they will rarely play to your advantage. And believe me when I tell you that it's a lot easier than you think for an interviewer to read you as a candidate during a job interview. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I know myself that it took me about 1 year of full-time coaching people for behavioral interviews to be able to read people well and to understand who they actually are during my coaching sessions. Similarly, for an interviewer, for a recruiter, it's a lot easier than you think that they understand how truthful you are in these job interviews. And it's not as if the moment they spot you're not 100% truthful, you're rejected. No, it's a combination, it's a sequence of events. And especially nowadays, when, believe me, that if you ask the AI to improve your answer 3 times, 2 out of those 3 times will be by faking something in that answer, by suggesting that you provide some information that it's not accurate with these things. It can be super tempting for you because you perceive, hey, you know what, if AI says this, why wouldn't I also take this into a job interview? So the perception is one such you try to impress in these job interviews, when in fact what I found is that I even advise candidates to rather stay scrappy during the job interviews, especially with the goal to try to sound and to come across as genuine as possible. Right? So again, we're speaking in context of subtle rejection reasons. So it's not about a one-off, it's not about the monumental mistake of making things up, but rather trying to impress over and over again, to overdo it, that might also not play to your advantage. All right, so I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.